So when you first go into ESS BIZTOOLS, you have got the opportunity of going to products, and in products you can select from the various aspects of ESS BIZTOOLS. Today we're looking at business advisory services as it relates to identifying government grants for you to be able to offer services of assisting clients with government grants as part of the non-compliance services that you're offering. On the left-hand side of the screen with the grey background is the introduction to business advisory services, the preparation material that we recommend that every firm that's contemplating commencing business advisory services should use to get started. And on the right-hand side of the screen with the blue background, we have the various products that have been prepared by ESS BIZTOOLS to assist accountants to offer non-compliance services. So the one we're going to look at today is identifying grants and incentives that can be of benefit to the small medium enterprise clients. With all of our material, we have an executive summary that you can read first up to decide whether you believe that this is the sort of material that you're looking for. And what we're going to do now is just download that. We're going to download that as Word documents because we want the PowerPoint slides that are part of the material. So obviously what we're looking at is identifying grants. Our concept is that as part of the business advisory services process, you or your accounting team would have had what we call a one-on-one meeting with the client. So you've sat down with the client using the SME needs analysis, which is a virtual menu of services that your firm could provide to your clients. And from that, your client has requested some additional information about a particular government grant. So what grants are available? There's a wide range of grants. Some people have estimated that approximately $5 billion is paid annually by the Australian and state and territory governments to businesses in Australia. They're not all small businesses, but small businesses receive a significant amount of money from these grants. Now these grants are normally targeted at specific types of businesses, and they're used by the government of the day to advance their particular policy on an issue. So when you're looking at trying to identify the grants that might assist one of your clients, entity type is very important. There is no doubt that companies receive far more grants than any other type of business structure. That's because the governments, the bureaucracy, obviously believe that, and in fact they stated on many occasions that to be serious in business you're going to be operating as a company. Now, I don't agree with that, and I doubt whether many of you will, but it's the view of the bureaucracy. As we all know, the tax office and various other parts, especially of the federal bureaucracy, don't like trusts at all. So there's not that many grants that are specifically inclusive of entities other than companies. There are some, but not that many. And some of them require your client to have incorporated as a company prior to receiving any grant benefits. So in Commercialisation Australia, an individual, a partnership, a trust even can apply for the grant, but if they are to be able to proceed with the grant, they must have incorporated as a company. There are different opinions in various federal government departments as to what a corporate trustee is all about. So you now find that in Enterprise Connect, a corporate trustee can apply, but not in too many other federal government grants. can a corporate trustee apply. So you need to be a bit careful in looking at that to determine whether your client might be eligible. If your client exports, there are both state and federal grants in most state governments to help exporters in their states. There is some benefit for importers, particularly importers who are going to export a product within 12 months of it having been imported into Australia. The number of employees can be very important, especially for some of the state and territory grants. Also the years in business and the annual turnover. In the material we also talk about annual expenditure because it's a potential entry requirement for Enterprise Connect. And Enterprise Connect is arguably the largest grant available on a numeric basis for small businesses in Australia. There are thousands of Enterprise Connect grants that are made available, and I believe it's a very desirable grant for small businesses. The only problem with it, it has a minimum turnover, which will rule quite a number of businesses out of eligibility, but it now applies to 13 different industries, and many of you will have clients that could be eligible for it. We also want to know whether the business is registered with ABNs. It's very difficult to get a government grant for a small business. In fact, it's impossible unless the applicant is registered with an ABN and is also registered for GST. The financial vulnerability of the business is asked in virtually every grant application. Therefore, you need to ensure that the client is financially viable from a federal bureaucracy point of view. Now, they're mainly concerned that they or their minister is going to be embarrassed if a grant's been approved to a particular business and within a very short period of time the business has gone into receivership or liquidation. That's the sort of material that's picked up by some of the news media and publicised, and it's not a very good career advancement activity for a bureaucrat to have recommended a company that very quickly, or a business that very quickly is in financial difficulties. And that's the way you should be considering the questions within grant applications as to the financial vulnerability of the business. Every government grant is targeted for a particular business and or industry, and they use the Australian and New Zealand industrial classifications, ANZIC. They're used to determine the profiles. So what are some of the common grants? Because, to be honest, I found some real problems in small businesses being able to access government grants. In some survey activity that David Smith from Smith Inc.'s been doing, he's found that many small businesses are critical that their accountants are not more familiar with government grants, and that's one of the reasons why this product was written in the first place, to try to give you some tools to assist without you necessarily having to become an expert in particular grants. So obviously research and development is one of the biggest ones, but I've come across people who have spent considerable sums of money. In one case over $400,000 on research and development, and had done it as a partnership, and was very upset when they found out that they were not going to get any additional deduction. Enterprise Connect, I've just mentioned, applies to 13 industries, minimum turnover requirements. Turnovers are not that high for businesses in remote or very remote locations, but a very interesting grant to assist businesses to undertake particular activities. Incidentally, I meant to mention at the beginning, but some of you are still logging on to this webinar. If you have any questions, can you please type them in? Raise your hand. That's the webinar jargon, and I will go through the questions near the end of the webinar and answer them. If you think of some questions later on, please send us an email and we will answer them for you. Export Market Development Grant. This is a grant that's applicable to a business with a turnover under $50 million who are exporting or proposing to export, as long as they have spent in excess of $20,000 on export market activities, development activities, and there's 13 major headings that eligible expenditure relates to. They could be eligible. The first year can in fact be a 2-year period, so as to ensure that the minimum expenditure of $20,000 has been achieved. So if in June 13 year the expenditure was $17,000, and in the previous year, June 12 year, the expenditure was $12,000, total of $32,000, that can be that business's first year for Export Market Development Grant. A practitioner in Adelaide rang me a few weeks ago and wanted to know more about Export Market Development Grant, because their firm had been very embarrassed because a client had been with them for some years, come in and told them they'd secured $66,000 as an Export Market Development Grant payment. It had been handled by another firm of accountants who were then making approaches to the firm to see whether they wanted to shift their accounting work to them as well. So the person that rang me was very embarrassed and indicated that they had no idea that this grant existed, and wanted to know how they could make sure that they were able to assist their clients in the future. So it's worth thinking about. Commercialisation Australia. Now this is a wonderful grant. It has 4 components: skills and knowledge, where the client can get a grant of up to $50,000 on an 80% basis. That's the best grant in Australia on a percentage basis. And some of that work accountants can do. Business plans, budgets, cash flows, some marketing work, assistance in training the client how to make an investment presentation. Then they've got proof of concept, a grant that can range from $50,000 to $250,000 on a 50% basis, so therefore the minimum amount of work is $100,000, the maximum is $500,000. And it's to help a client go from a conceptual idea, a basic prototype, to a final preparedness to be able to make the first commercial sale. And it can include wages for the client and their team that are involved in this process. I have a couple of clients involved in this program at present, and it's a very good way to help the client take it from an idea through to a commercial reality. There's also experienced executives whereby a grant can be secured of up to $175,000 per annum for 2 years, so a total of $350,000 on a 50-50 basis, to assist in the employment with one or more experienced commercialization executives who can help this new company get on its feet. And then you have the major grant, the biggest grant for Commercialisation Australia, early stage commercialisation, up to $2 million from a minimum of $50,000 on a 50% basis, to help bring a commercial idea to reality. It could include a pilot plant, which is the projects that I'm familiar with, but there's quite a number of companies listed on the Commercialisation Australia website that have secured grants in excess of $1 million up to $2 million on this very important grant area. Apprenticeship grants. There are 9 separate apprenticeship grants in Australia. Now some of them are restricted to trades that are listed on the National Skills Needs list, but there are some others that generally apply to most businesses. Clean technology, a series of grants that was introduced by the previous Prime Minister about 12 months ago, basically to do with the carbon tax legislation the current Prime Minister has indicated there's going to be some changes to the carbon tax, and I noticed in the last 48 hours a mention that some of the programs would have to be changed to compensate for changes in the carbon tax, so there could be some changes in the near future on the clean technology. Medical industry. Most of you will have clients who are medical practitioners. There are various grants available for general practitioners and specialists to relocate, and it can be a relocation from a capital city metropolitan area, in a metropolitan area, that's what I should have said, to an outer metropolitan area, or to a regional or a remote location, and there are different grant amounts that are payable. And obviously we've got natural disaster relief, and there's some new grants in the process of being announced at present to assist farmers with the drought conditions that unfortunately many of them are facing around Australia. So there's a wide range of grants. There's hundreds of others. They're just a summary. We'll just go back so you can just have another look at them. They're just a summary. But if you were handling those for each of your clients in your firm, you'd be creating a lot of very proactive activity with your clients. And there's another very important matter to consider here, because this particular webinar is on business advisory services, the tools within ESS BIZTOOLS that can assist you to offer business advisory services. We honestly believe that government grants is one of those areas, one of the services that you should be very seriously offering to your clients. Why? Well, there's a fair bit of the work that can be done by accountants. I've mentioned a couple of the ideas on skills and knowledge under Commercialisation Australia, but also in that proof of concept grant. It normally means that there's a project management role that you might be able to handle. It's making sure the paperwork's filled in, the records are kept properly, and the client keeps on working through the timetable. So you can charge a fee for that, anywhere between 5 up to say 10% of what the project value is. Meet with the client each month, make sure they're staying on target. Within Enterprise Connect, the grant can be up to $20,000 on a 50-50 basis to undertake virtually anything which will improve the business performance of your client. Now, I know of, and I've undertaken some of these tasks, it's work that's been undertaken by accountants under that program. Business plans, market research, budget and cash flow forecasts, human resources activities, reviewing chart of accounts, acting as a facilitator in a business's management activities. All of these type of things are work that accountants are undertaking, and you could be doing so. So what we're going to do now is go to the, I'm just going to check to see if there's any questions. I haven't got any questions. Remember, if you have any questions, can you please type them in and send them to us. What we're going to do now is just go on to the ESS BizGrants website, which is the product which we have developed, which will assist accountants. So you've looked at this from a business advisory services activity and decided that you wish to offer services to assist clients to locate grants. You can undertake all the research yourself and find out what the various grants are about, make contact with the various government departments, mainly Oz Industries in the federal sphere, but the various state areas. You can do that, or you could utilise a product and the one we're going to talk about is ESS Biz Grants, which is the product we've produced that it has been specifically designed to assist you as the accountant to identify government grants that might suit a particular client. So when you first start using this material, you need to complete a client profile. This profile takes about 6 minutes to complete. So I've already prepared a draft one this morning. We've had lots of drafts, as you can see if I'm just flicking through here. But I have a business down the bottom which I called Metropolitan Engineering Services, which I'm going to edit so I get it back to the beginning so you can see how this is working. So I made the entry. I've already inserted a client name, Metropolitan Engineering Services. You could use a reference number there if you like. This is cloud technology, and we are recommending that you leave the profile in the system so that next year it's only going to be a couple of minutes to update the information. You need to identify what type of entity the business is operating in. We've selected a company. This is a proprietary limited company. We're saying the business exports. They also do some importing. They've got 12 employees. They've got an ABN. They've been in business for 10 years. Some grants require the client to have been in business for some time. Enterprise Connect talks about 3 years. A number of the state government grants talk about anywhere between 2 and 4 years to have been in business. Every so often I get emails from accountants saying, what grants are there for startups? Unfortunately, there's not many anymore. There used to be 10 years ago, but there's not anymore. The only startup grants that are really around are under Commercialisation Australia, the skills and knowledge. The business does not need any sort of turnover to apply. Neither does it need a turnover for proof of concept. But there's not too many others. Export Market Development Grant, you can receive a Export Market Development Grant before you've actually made export sales. But there's not too many others. We've put in the system that the turnover is 4.5 million. We're saying the expenditure's 4.150 million. They're registered for GST. They're not tax exempt. They're doing some research and development, and there's no concerns about the financial vulnerability. So when we'd originally put that in, we would have saved it. We have put in I hope, a hypothetical address in Botany Road, Canterbury, New South Wales. Once we inserted the postcode, the system identified that this is within the major cities of Australia. These are the classifications that are primarily used for the Enterprise Connect grants. The financial details are as we've already stated. The business and industry profile, under the ANZIC codes, you need to select which business classification applies. We've selected a manufacturer, and we need to select the industry because these grants are tailored to both business classifications and industry classifications. So we've nominated that this is a manufacturing business. One of the unfortunate consequences of that, manufacturing is a very broad definition, as you will see in a moment. So that's the basic data. We go into it and we can now search. Now, the system's saying we got 43 potential grants. Now, they're not all readily applicable because we have 9 apprenticeship grants that have been offered to us. So to give you an idea how the apprenticeship grants might work, we go to this one here. We go into an information which is then giving us some grant details. Now this is saying that the business has to be listed in the national skills list. So first of all we look at the funding details. So there's how much the client can receive. We then have this concept of a grant toolkit. So within the toolkit it says, do you want to see what's in the National Skills Needs List? Now, there's about 102 business classifications here. There is a few of them which fit a definition of a manufacturing industry. That's why manufacturing's come up in this area. And we have diesel motor mechanics, we've got gas fitters, we've got metal fabricators, metal machinists. So, but as you'll see in a moment, manufacturing also covers more than just, say, steel manufacturing. It's also covering cooking, so pastry cooks come up. So there's a number of trades there that could have applied to this particular grant. So we've had a look at that. You say, oh, you might decide, yes, we're interested in it. If you wanted to read the paper, you could read the paper on that particular grant, but you might decide, no, the client probably not that interested in that. So we'll go back and go back to results. You can look at some of these other grants. Australian Bureau of Statistics, Australian Technology is a state government grant between New South Wales and Queensland. Clean Technology, I'm just going to flick through some of these so you get an idea of some of the grants. This was a manufacturing business that said that was doing research and development. So it could have been eligible for some of these larger grants. The clothing and textile industry also comes up because that's also classified as manufacturing. The continuous improvement programs are for clients that have already done some work in a particular Enterprise Connect activity. Manufacturing or manufacturers could also be coming up in some of the other Enterprise Connect classifications like defence. These are now some of the Commercialisation Australia one. Let's go through and work through an export market development grant so you can see how this works. We've got the grant details. There's the funding details. You can receive up to $150,000 on a 50% basis. You can click on and get the grant toolkit if you wish, a paper. And then there are some additional criteria that has to be answered, because in those initial profile area we had 20 questions, but in total there's over 800 questions. So some of the questions that now relate to export marketing: have you spent money on the demand for export? Yes. If you are claiming overseas representatives' expenses, have you maintained documentary evidence of the role they've played? We say yes. If you are claiming expenses under the marketing visits, have you maintained full records? Because this is obviously what you've got to do. If you've claimed 2 export market development grants prior years, have you discussed with Austrade the export performance test? So there is a test after you've claimed 2 grants. Let's say this is a new claim for this business. They've only just started to export. Has the business spent more than $20,000 in 2012-13? And bear in mind, this return has to be lodged by the 2nd of December, normally the 30th of November, but the 30th of November is a Saturday this year. Is the business the principal for the export business? Now, the system has now done is identify that you're potentially eligible for this grant. If you wanted to apply now, you could click on there. It would take you to the Austrade site. If we go back to results, we now have within potentially eligible, we have that you're potentially eligible for a grant. Now, I'm not going to go through the rest of the grants that were there, because this webinar is about utilising the business advisory services aspect of ESS BIZTOOLS to identify grants, just to give you an idea what you could do. The system will then prepare a report which will have the name of the client on it, and will also have your name. It doesn't have ESS BIZTOOLS, it has your name as the authorised user. And you have a summary report which tells the client what the grant's all about and what the particular benefits are. So that's how the ESS BIZTOOLS approaches identifying government grants for businesses to utilise. It is an interesting area. You can be very proactive in this area. Our recommendation is that you create a profile for every one of your business clients as you're completing their annual financial accounts, so that you can sit down then and have a discussion with them and ask them whether they wish to apply for the grant or they are going to commission you to do so, and act as the liaison with the appropriate government department. It's an interesting area. It opens up also some very interesting work that is being done. It also is a device to help you to retain your good clients, because it is definitely being used by some people as a means of identifying businesses that they can approach to join them as clients.